Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Saturday. It's Daryl here. It is not so bright and early anymore. It's 7 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, today I just got back from my usual walk around town. It's about 4 miles. It takes about an hour. And I had the idea for this video when I left. And as I was over the course of the walk, I've told you guys I do my best thinking when I'm exercising, like with the blood flowing and everything. And about halfway out of on the walk, the ideas for this video all fell together. And I started double timing it to get back here. I was so excited to do this video because I started to get the framework for what I wanted to talk about. Okay, this is what I want to talk about. Sometimes I believe that this is almost therapeutic for me, sitting here and talking to you guys in front of this camera. A lot of times I've said things here to you guys that I've never even talked about before. A lot of times I worry about it because I am so open with you guys. I'm going to talk about that too. I'm going to there's one part of this that I want to talk about honesty too. Okay, this is the idea of the video. For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted a tattoo. I've always thought tattoos were cool. Now, for anybody that wants to comment in the comments, I'm not criticizing anybody here. This is more just kind of introspection and myself, and I want to know if you guys can relate to this. I'm not putting anybody down or criticizing anybody, but I've always wanted a tattoo. I mean, going all the way back to high school, I think I remember, and I always had an idea. I remember back in high school when I got out, I wanted, like, I guess what they call a tribal, like around my bicep. I can't remember. I remember when somebody got like a barbed wire. That's old now. I saw like tribals with eagle heads like interlocked by the beaks. I remember wanting that. This was like 40 years ago. And I've always wanted a tattoo. And I always had one picked out in my head. Nowadays, I just was watching the news and they had a female police officer on there, a young female police officer probably in her 20s. And she had her arms covered, sleeves with flowers on one arm, and I can't remember what was on the other arm. And I started thinking about this. Even police officers, women, if you watch the old shows from, like Leave It to Beaver, or even shows from the 70s maybe, like All in the Family. It was the guy back then. The guys that had tattoos were even kind of questionable. Like if a girl brought home a guy that had a tattoo, the parents might not, is this guy a sailor or a criminal or something? Seriously, and it would never cross anybody's mind for a woman to have a tattoo, like a woman like having a tattoo on her arms or bicep or shoulders. That was unheard of back in the 60s and 70s, or God forbid, the 50s. But I've always wanted a tattoo, and I see how this younger generation, like I guess you'd call it Generation Z or the Millennials. I think it started with the Millennials. How it's almost just a rite of passage. Almost all. I don't know what the percentage is. I'd be interested just to Google that. What the percentage of Millennials and Gen Zers that have tattoos are. But I started thinking about this. I've always wanted a tattoo, and here I am. I'm gonna be 58 years old, and I don't even have a tattoo yet. And I'm wondering why haven't I ever gone through with this? I'm getting to the point where my skin is starting to get a little saggy and wrinkly, and I'm running out of time to get a tattoo. I mean, they talk about how tattoos age, that they'll get kind of saggy and wrinkly as somebody gets older, and I'm already in that I'm entering that zone. Okay, so I was wondering, why I always wondered if it was the money, because it's a big investment. Not big, but substantial. I've always, if I was going to get one, I'd want something large, not just a few, small ones. I want, like a sleeve, something large. I figure it would take a lot of time and money. I'm figuring off the top of my head like $500. But I really thought about that this morning, because I was thinking in my head, maybe it's because I always think there's a higher priority for something else, for my money. But then I really started thinking about that. And I was like, right now I'm doing fairly well with art and the YouTube channel and a few other side gigs I have. And I don't have to choose between one or the other. I could get a tattoo and get a guitar or more paint supplies or a new bike or a surfboard or the new car I'm going to be buying. So it's not the money. And I started thinking about it. And this is where like I talk about how it's almost therapeutic sitting here in front of this camera, because it occurred to me, I realized after the videos, especially I've done the last week, talking about Danny Matheson and being a victim, having been a victim myself, it suddenly hit me like a sledgehammer, and I realized why I haven't gotten a tattoo. The main reason, I think there's basically three reasons, and I'm going to go from the biggest one down to the smallest one. The biggest one, it occurred to me that I just sitting next to a guy that I don't know, a stranger, for what, 2 hours, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, because I want something substantial. How draining that would be for me, because I always considered myself an introvert. Audrey used to argue with that. She's like, you're not an introvert. But I really think I am, and this is why I think I am. They define introvert and extrovert. Like, extroverts need to be around people to re-energize themselves. They feel lonely when they're not, it drives them crazy to be alone. Me, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm not saying this, I almost feel, I don't feel right saying this, but I've never felt lonely. I feel more comfortable alone most of the time. It's draining for me to be around people. I need to go back into like solitude to re-energize myself. Just yesterday, I went out with my mom for 2 hours, for two and a half hours. We sat at Dunkin' Donuts and we talked, talked. And it's not the same with my family or with women too. It's something I've talked about. But sitting with a guy, and with him tattooing me and putting his hands on me, physically touching me, because this is just what occurred to me this morning. It would be, I know no matter how hard I tried, my anxiety level would go up inside, and I'd probably rattle on nervously. I'd talk a lot trying to, cover it up. And if this went on for 2 or 3 hours, I think I would be so exhausted, emotionally and mentally. By the time I left that place, I'd be a mess. I need to go home and sleep, I think, seriously. But being next, I thought, what would I do for those 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours? Could I read? Would that be, how's the tattoo etiquette? Would I be able to sit there with a book and just ignore him? Could I fall asleep? And then the other option was actually sitting there in silence, which probably would end up being the most comfortable for me. Or sit there and try to make conversation for 3 or 4 hours, which would just drain me. There's times when I think about going to my barber, and I've talked about my MAGA barber before, and just sitting there for 15 minutes. Before I go there, I'm sure other people could identify with this. I actually think of topics in my head before I get there, or things I could talk about while I'm sitting there, because it's just, I've talked about, it's uncomfortable for me because of social anxiety. And on top of that it's a guy. And then on top of that, if the tattoo artist is actually touching me, physically, it would be, the anxiety level would go high. So I started thinking about this morning. What if it was a woman? And this is where the honesty comes in, because I have to be honest. What good would it do for me to sit here and not tell you guys the honest truth? If I sat here and made stuff up just to sound this way or that way, it'd be pointless. But so the truth of the matter is, I would feel more comfortable if it was a woman doing the tattooing. I don't know why. I just feel more comfortable, especially with somebody's hands on me. Then I thought about the age. And it would have to be, for me to be most comfortable, it'd have to be a woman probably over 35, and I was like, what? I wonder why that is. I've had counselors before that were in their 20s, when I was in detox and rehab and all that. And I had a few counselors that were right out of school, like in their mid-20s. And I didn't have a problem with that. I'm interested in hearing everybody's, input is valuable to me. But this isn't that kind of situation with getting a tattoo. There's not input on rehab in this situation. But like if it was a woman between 35 and whatever, 70, even 70, I'd feel most comfortable. Okay, so that's what it is. It's sitting there with a guy, sitting there with a person I don't really know, first of all. Being a guy, second of all, a male. And this has nothing to do with alpha male. For the trolls out there, it has nothing to do with aggressiveness or dominance or alpha male this or any of that stuff. It's just like social anxiety and just sitting, and being an introvert. It has nothing to do, because I have trolls that talk about What do you think you're an alpha male? Tell me how to be an alpha male. They say that, sarcastically to be a big ass. So there's that. Okay, the second reason, because of art, is somebody else's artwork. And being an artist, art is very personal. All the paintings I've done have come totally from my imagination. There are things that I pictured. I have one here, one of my paintings. This is a failure. This did not come out good. And see, it's two people. The idea for this is I remembered being like 15, 16, and sitting with girls I like when school started in the fall, and sitting on the sidewalk as it got dark with the leaves falling, and sitting and talking and chatting and wondering if I'm gonna get a kiss when I go home, and I see it getting dark and I got to get home soon, and smelling the leaves and all that. And I wanted to put that into a painting. That feeling that, of being a teenager again and sitting talking to a girl I liked. And it just didn't come out that way. It came out kind of creepy. Nobody when I showed my family and friends this, they didn't understand it. But getting back to that, it's very personal. That's my point. Artwork is very personal. Even if I picked out something of my own artwork for an artist to put on me, because I don't know how to tattoo. I couldn't tattoo myself. It's still his artwork. And having somebody else's artwork on me for the rest of my life, it's not something, it doesn't bother me, but it's not me. Why would I want that? Why would I want somebody else's personal artwork? And I think being an artist, I just understand how personal somebody's creativity is. Even if it's a design I drew, it's still somebody else putting it into the shading and all that, putting it on my body. It's their artwork. And I can't put it more into words than that. I thought about tattoos. Where would I want one? So this will lead me into the third reason. My arms. Where would I get one? And I got, like I said, being totally honest again, my arms, my shoulders, and my chest are probably my most. I'm happy with them. I don't want to say proud. I don't want to sound arrogant, but so would a tattoo, emphasize them, or would it detract from them? Being part Native American, I've always kind of been proud of my skin complexion, the darker reddish skin complexion. And I don't know if a tattoo would add to that. Would be like like putting mustard on a hot dog. I don't know how else to put it. Like adding to what I, or is it better just to leave the, liking the way I look, myself? One thing I could never do is get a tattoo on my face. There you see some people with their faces covered with tattoos, and I don't want to talk bad about anybody here. That's not the point of this video. But I've always kind of wondered about that. Your face is your personality. It's you. From the moment you were born. And I've always liked my face. I've been happy with my face. And I just can't imagine covering it up with somebody else's artwork or somebody else's symbols. Then the neck. Whenever I seen people with tattoos on the neck, I instantly thought they're tough. They're badasses. Seriously, because it's got to be painful. Plus, your arteries and your carotid arteries and your jugular veins are in your neck and everything. And even if it's a girl, a guy, or whatever, I've secretly inside, I've always like, wow, that's a tough person. The teardrops. I think that used to be a sign of somebody's tough that supposedly did something. Honestly, now I don't move in those circles, but I think a lot of if I saw that now, I think I'd have doubts. I think it's somebody trying to look like they're tough, like they did this deed that's supposed to represent the teardrop. But then again, maybe they did. And even if they did do that, why would you be, I don't know that I'd be proud of doing what that represents. You guys know what I think. I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. So that's it. That's the three reasons. Social anxiety, being an introvert. I can't imagine sitting next to a guy I've never met before and have him with his hands on me, putting his own artwork on my body. And, that's it. Those are basically the three things. The artwork, my body. I'm proud of my body the way it is. I am. I don't want to sound arrogant or conceited, but I am. I'm happy with the way I am. At 58, I've become comfortable, and I like what I see when I look in the mirror. If that sounds arrogant, so be it. I think we all need to love ourselves to some degree, really. I mean, I've learned that in recovery. And some of the reasons I started using in the first place is because I didn't care about myself. I didn't, there was things that bothered me that I had in my mind that I didn't like about myself, that I blamed myself for. And it's much more healthy for me now to work past that and actually like who I am and be comfortable with who I am, regardless of what anybody says in the comments or anybody else's opinions of me or why I do things. It's good to have the confidence to know in your heart who you are. All right, so there it is. Let me know what you think. Do you have tattoos? Why'd you get a tattoo? If you don't have a tattoo, why didn't you get a tattoo? And does this click with you? All right, let me know in the comments. Have a great Saturday.